Awesome. Well, I am Sydney Kelly. I'm going to lead these off-mute sessions from here on out. So I am new to these discussions as well, but I'm really excited to be here and to jump into these conversations. Quick background on me. Before I joined Amplio, I did work as a school-based SLP here in Michigan, which is still where I call home. And since coming to Amplio, I have had the chance to wear a few different hats and most importantly, work closely with special education administrators and other SLPs across the country, which has been an incredible experience for me. Learned a lot. And so I am very excited to have the opportunity to connect with all of you through these off-mute sessions and continue those conversations and learn from each other. So today, we have a fun topic, money. But before we dive into that, just a couple of housekeeping things. Small group, so I don't think we need to raise hands. Just feel free to jump in. Obviously, it's just the four of us now. But if at any point you don't feel like you have a moment to jump in and there's a thought you want to put out there to circle back to, please feel free to use the chat. I'll keep my eye on that just in case you do drop anything in there. But just like it says here, no need to be polished. Just share your honest thoughts, experiences. This is a great time for us to hear from each other without, running it through a over professional filter. So at the end of the day today, we would love to hear about ideas for future off-mute sessions, what we could focus on for those topics, those discussions. So we'd love to hear from you on that. And then we'll take those ideas and send out a quick survey to get a vote on what our next off-mute session will focus on. All right. So in a time where it kind of feels like we're being asked to do more with less, I think this is an appropriate conversation to have. So I would just love to hear, how are you prioritizing what your students need most, and what are some ways that you've worked to overcome or worked around funding challenges when it does come to those asks?
So Phyllis, I know when you joined, you were saying it's been a little crazy start to the school year. So tell us a little bit more about what's going on in Texas City.
Well, there are quite a few more referrals, and we seem to be getting quite a few more non-English speakers who are being referred, as well as just a lot of students. And we were discussing this, where the pandemic seems to still have, unfortunately, lasting effects. Children are now the ones that are, say, kindergarten and first grade level, seem to have, we're beginning to notice more and more challenges with these students.
Yeah, I've heard that almost from every single district that we've talked to, that there's a lot more kindergartners coming in that have pretty significant needs, whether it's learning needs or communication needs or a combination of both. I'm sure you guys are seeing somewhat similar things in Kansas. Are you, Stacy? Yeah. How are you guys managing the surge in referrals? Is everyone just maxing themselves out, or there's not really does there seem to be any effort like district wide to kind of come up with a system solution, or is it just falling on individual therapists and teachers to kind of plug the gaps?
We recently met as a group, and let's just say maybe SLP number one has 2 or 3 evals due, and the other has 5 or 6. We are attempting to collaborate and share the load. So fortunately, we're aware, and the administrators and the leaders are looking at each one's numbers, and we're attempting to balance everything out by having people to share and help each other, collaborate.
Well, that's great that you have a team that's able to kind of communicate candidly about that, and then willingness to kind of share the load. and rebalance that when you can. I mean, that's good. I mean, that really helps enormously when there's that kind of collaboration and within the team, at least. Yeah. Is that, you were nodding, Stacy? Does that kind of how you guys are handling it?
Due to, location issues, I'm in rural Kansas. I'm just south of the Kansas City metro area. So I will admit I'm not Dorothy in Western Kansas, but still, our districts, like there aren't a lot of SLPs. Like I actually work with a special education cooperative. So, nearby schools, same sort of thing, we could step in, but we haven't done a lot of that just because of location. It may be a 45-minute drive to somebody, who would need help. And it just, for logistical reasons, and then, getting into new buildings and, managing, all of that we haven't done some, things like that yet. I really feel like a lot is, pushing those dates. It used to be, I would be able to complete, communication evaluation in a shorter period of time. And I just have been having to communicate, with the teams, with family, with administration I would just like to remind you that there are 60 school days for me to complete this evaluation. At this time we are looking at, therefore, I would anticipate, maybe it would be at this time, before I would be able to do that. I've even, with some families scheduled and that seems to be, they seem to don't like the vagueness, but if I'm like, okay, I would like to schedule this one with you on November 19th. And here's what's going to happen, between now and then, but according, to my schedule, that's when I'm, going to be able to do that. And I feel like my families have been better about, just knowing that there's a date on the calendar. And for myself, that's lessened the load of everything is all at once. It's like I just have to work the system as far as continuing with my direct therapy and but I not even just in the speech language, but behaviorally, my colleagues are just dealing with so much. And I've really tried to take more of a that every student does not have to be served direct services approach. We've really been encouraged in the state of Kansas to look at a continuum of care. And it's getting harder and harder to get that time in the classroom with teachers. And yes, communication, behavioral, social, our classroom teachers are needing a lot of support, with those things right now.
I know everyone's maxed out. It's not just the related service providers and the special education staff. It's the gen ed teachers are maxed out too. Yeah. And it's so challenging. And I think, sort of like a overriding, even though we've had kind of different topics in these off mutes, an overriding theme that we've kind of touched on, which is basically what you're saying, Stacy, is we have to figure out how to not be so siloed, because we all need help and we all need to be able to support each other, and we need to be able to collaborate across different teams to meet these kids' needs, and to also make the school a functioning place when we're all kind of maxed in terms of our capacity to give, right? And I think that's really the best thing. And I love what you said, Stacy, also about kind of giving a little bit more, giving the information you can, even if you can't immediately get to something, to saying, here's when it will happen. I think that so often it's the uncertainty that gives people
Mhm.
like anxiety. And if you can give them something concrete that they can kind of hang their hat on, then that helps just lessen the anxiety around like what's going to happen. Because, we know these families of kids who are kind of newly eligible for services, they're dealing with so many things just internally too, of like, oh, I thought my kid was doing fine, and now I'm finding out maybe that's not true. And what does this mean for us? And so, giving them a little bit of like certainty around at least having some clear answers about what might happen next is, I think, a gift that you're giving them. I think that's really good.
And still continuing with those conversations about, like I said, like the continuum of services is something that I'm really trying to start early. I think in the field of speech pathology and all the related services, we've had such a medical model
I know.
of services, and everyone thinks, okay, so my child has a speech delay, my child has a communication delay. You are going to start seeing them, and then you are going to fix it.
Yes.
And then we're going to go, we're going to go from there.
Like
You're
it's a handoff. Like, here,
Yes.
you take care of it.
You are going to pull them out. You are going to fix the thing. You are going to put them back in. And it's, I've really gotten some pushback. I was very much a 2 times a week, 30 minutes, speech pathologist. And I'm trying to move into, more of a continuum of services and talking with families about harmful effects and least restrictive environment, very early. Like, we are not necessarily going to go to that first. We're going to, try some other things, do some other things. We're trying to bump up, our MTSS tiers. I'm trying to do some education there and get involved, in that differently. And yeah, I mean, I've most definitely gotten some pushback. Luckily not from my administration as much, luckily not as much from teachers, but parents, have gotten that in their idea. I think what they're looking for is outpatient services.
Yes.
And a lot of reminder of that is not how schools operate. We're looking at educate. I mean, we've been having this conversation with our families, for years. And, the reminder of, we are looking at ways to provide services for your child the length that they need. Outpatient services, unfortunately, are often regulated by insurance companies. So at least the continuum that we're looking at for schools would have more than 8 visits or 12 visits or whatever. So you have to hang in there with me as far as if I'm looking to go low and slow, in the beginning. And I'm trying to change that up, which is hard because I'm also of the early intervention is so huge mindset. It is stretching, my capacity here, but I'm working at it.
Well, it's interesting, Stacey, as you were talking, I was thinking about the fact, I started my career in early intervention. So I worked in birth to 3, like my first kind of 5 years out of grad school. And it happened to be at the time that's when everything moved from center-based care to families, home-based.
Yes. Yep.
And it was right at that transition when I was working in early intervention. And so I started out my first year out of grad school. I was in a center and I had tons of professionals around me, and the kids would come and get services at the center. And then the next year I was going and doing home visits. And it was really interesting because it's sort of the same idea of like transitioning sort of like from a medical model to like a family systems model in the case of birth to 3, but from a medical model in terms of pull-out services to a school-based, systems model when you're intervening early and doing, supporting teachers with tier 2 supports and that kind of thing. I think it's kind of a similar like mind shift, that you have to make, and not just you as a professional, but like helping your community sort of make that shift too. And parents valuing that, right?
Yes. No,
Mhm.
and I am sure you lived it, that this is the end of the world, where this is the
Yes.
worst thing ever. And we have watched that be a very successful model, you
Yes,
know.
yes. Yeah, yeah. Oh, good. We had someone else able to join. Hi, Irina.
Hi.
Welcome, welcome. So yeah, we were just,
Hello, I'm mostly listening.
oh, good. I'm so glad you're here. So we were just kind of talking through what kind of the state of things are in all of our various settings right now, and the challenges of just our overloaded referral systems and caseloads, and trying to move to a more like school-wide systems model where we're less siloed and able to kind of share the load a little bit. So good. I'm glad you're here, Irina. You're welcome to just listen in. That's totally fine. Yeah. And I think, as you were saying, Stacy, that you were working more towards integrating MTSS, like, what does that look like for you? Like, how does that look for you?
Well, I've actually am piloting in some of my preschool, kindergarten classrooms, kind of for at this time frame, and I'm kind of doing it as a push in service of doing some whole group instruction
Oh, wow.
with teachers present.
Yeah.
We've kind of, curriculum wise, there's kind of been some changes, and some tools that we've been using for structured literacy have kind of changed, and people are not feeling great about that. And so, modeling a lot of the things that I say to kids about speech sounds, and the things that I say to kids about phonological awareness, and kind of like bridging that gap. Really, like my intention, my hope is to, work into preschool, kindergarten, maybe even like by next year, first grade, but then like have those terms, have those words, where teachers are, after these first couple of years, providing tier 1 services.
Yeah.
But they've had some training in what that looks like. Then, like, I'm heavy now, I would step out more, and kind of then I would move more into the tier 2 services and be more of a collaborator, a consultant. And so maybe it wouldn't, again, we're not talking every, there are some very unintelligible kids out there that really need the direct services. This would not be an every kid, but also take those referrals down from the sky high limits that they are. We're really focusing on speech sounds, phonological awareness, but I see some language implications and some
Of
language
course.
teaching,
Yes.
that can happen too. I don't want to take on too much at once. I don't want to freak them out, but I see this like a developing, relationship. So those are some things that are happening, in my district right now. This is done with no guidance. This is just me going, hey, like, the way we do things has not been working. So, and like I said, this is a building that I alone, provide services in. So I'm able to do some things that I know have to be done differently and have to be thought differently in, other locations of our world. So
So it sounds like you had some prior good relationships with the teachers that you're kind of piloting with that allowed you to kind of say, hey, let's give this a try. And then they were open to it.
And yes, I have some excellent teachers, but some of those gen ed teachers aren't feeling supported. I think just even having me in the room and sometimes seeing what they're dealing with, I feel like sometimes with teachers, they've been coming to to us as related service providers. They've been coming to administration. They've been coming to special education staff. And I think sometimes we're giving ideas, but we're not collaborating.
Mhm.
And I think that they are starting to really see the benefit of like me being in the room, you know, it's collaboration. It's like, hey, what about this? And them saying, hey, can you come watch it this time? Because this seems to be, have you noticed this? And it really is like, I'm so happy with, you know, these opportunities for improved collaboration. Don't
Mhm.
get me wrong. I understand, like, we are busy. Like, it's hard to make the time for this. And it's a shift that's happening slowly, but I think it's a shift that's maybe important.
Mhm. So, Stacy, when you're carving time out to do that, are you carving it out of like otherwise it would be like your planning and documentation time? Like you're kind of sacrificing your, or how are you doing it?
Not necessarily. What I've kind of done is over time, like as I get new students as I have younger students, I'm writing it into
Oh,
IEPs.
excellent. Okay,
Yes.
great.
And I am starting out not direct service in my IEPs. And like I said, these are conversations. It's taking a while, but I'm changing some things up there. I'm kind of writing myself more as like a support. And again, like I said, we're not talking every kid, but you know, lots of different
I
things. Lots of
see. So
different,
this is your
different,
service time for kids that are in that classroom who it's appropriate for.
yeah. And
Interesting.
I
Okay.
and
Okay.
in some cases, I have 2 or 3 kids in that room that is their push in time, but it's done in a whole group and it has a different focus because the focus is paras hearing what I'm saying, teachers hearing what I'm
Yes.
saying.
Well, I think it's so fascinating, Stacy, because SLPs have been using that model in self-contained classrooms for a long time, but you're doing it in like a general ed classroom, which is really unique, I think. I don't know. Phyllis, do you
Where
think that would fly at your school in your district? Could you do that?
Yeah,
Possibly not.
yeah,
Some people are more into pull out that they automatically think in this area, not just here in Texas City, but in other parts of Texas, they're not as open to push in for general education speech. Of course, for life skills, that's fine, but it would take a lot of convincing and research, of course, to kind of get people on that page.
Yeah, yeah. But it sounds like, Stacy, that's kind of where you started, is sort of individual, because I imagine the conversation probably started at the IEP meeting with the families, right? Like,
yeah. And to be quite honest, a lot of these conversations started with administration and with you know, teachers, as far as like I need to know I have your support to be moving, you know, in these directions. But yeah, then you know, in the meetings, yeah, those conversations about like, hey, I need to let you know up front that the view of speech pathologists that we're used, you know, speech pathology that we're used to is very medical, and it's very pull out and for lack of a better word, we're not doing that here anymore.
yeah.
And so yeah.
I love that, Stacy. I think that's really thoughtful and innovative of you. And I think it's cool that you've been able to find teachers that you can get on board with that, and families who obviously you have been skilled in, presenting this to families in a way that's going to, help them understand how this could benefit their child in the long run too. So I think that's really cool. I like it. Yeah. So one of the things, kind of to bring us back to this idea of funding that we wanted to talk about today, is you know, you've managed to kind of carve out, Stacy, an approach where you don't need additional tools to kind of be effective in this new initiative that you're doing. But sometimes when we're trying to kind of implement a new framework like that, we do need new tools. We need like collaboration tools, or we need, you know, software or whatever, or PD even. So funding for
Yes.
PD. And I think that one of the things that maybe, Sid, if you could pull the deck back up, one of the things that we've talked about across the, you know, country with different SLPs in different districts is the fact that we're not just necessarily limited to thinking about SPED funds, because everyone knows how limited SPED funds are. And we've talked to a lot of folks who, when they are talking about things like what you're doing, Stacy, where we're pushing into gen ed and we're impacting, you know, really the teachers and the whole class, in addition to kids who may be on a SPED caseload, there might be, if we're looking at things like PD dollars or other, you know, tools that we want to purchase, it's really important for us as SLP team members to understand, like, where are all the pockets of monies that can support things outside of just the SPED budget, right? And so one of the things that we did that we'll share out to all of you guys after this conversation is put this kind of almost cheat sheet sort of deck together that we can share out, that basically talks about other funding sources that we know people are accessing for these kinds of things. So maybe Sid, go ahead to the next one. So first of all, starting with SPED, something we're all familiar with. You know, I think we've talked about this in the summer sessions, but there is a pocket of SPED funds that can be used for tier 2, for example, or for more kind of push-in type support. And those are called CEIS funds. In the 2004 reauthorization of IDEA, this language was actually added to IDEA, where there's this voluntary early intervening funds of up to 15% of IDEA funding for your district can be used for basically kids who are not yet identified for SPED. So specifically, we're talking about tier 2, right? And PD related to that. And for districts who've been flagged for disproportionality, meaning that kids who are in minority groups have been over-identified for SPED, those districts are actually required to use up to 15% for early intervening funds. And so you may or may not know if your district is in that position, but the good news is that regardless, you can voluntarily use up to 15% of SPED funds for this. So that's important to know. And what we have linked in here is the Department of Ed page that talks about those funds and sort of what they can be used for. And we'll send that out. And if you want to know, like, who in your district is responsible for those funds, in this case for the CEIS funds, it's going to be your SPED director. Or if you're in a smaller district and you don't have a director of special education, sometimes it's called a federal programs coordinator, who is someone who's over all the title funds plus special education. And then if we go outside of SPED, Sid, you can kind of go to the next one. There's all different title funds, right? So Title I can be used for things like, you know, early literacy tools, like you were talking about, Stacy. A lot of what you're doing in these kind of pushing collaboration models is working on things like early literacy. It can be used for PD, either for teachers or for your speech team around oral language, and also around family engagement, which I think is also something that is really good to think about when you're thinking about collaboration with your general ed staff, is like, how do we involve families in that communication? Like you were talking about, obviously we have our IEP meetings, but for kids who aren't in special education, how are we involving families in that communication as well? And then up in the corner of this, you can see kind of, these are the different positions in different districts. It's sometimes called a Title I coordinator who's in charge of that budget, a director of federal programs, or even your curriculum instruction leadership team that might be in charge of the Title I funds. And then there's a whole nother set of title funds that also can be used for these kinds of things. Title II is all PD funds. Title III is English language learners. And Title IV is technology and whole child. So when we send this out, and you can see kind of up in the corner who might be in charge of those funds in your district. So like, you know, we as SLPs who either are formally or informally a lead SLP in our district, you know, we have direct access to our special ed director usually, and we sit under that person. But that person, you know, our SPED director has, you know, peer level relationships with all of these other directors and coordinators who are in charge of these other budgets. And so, you know, if we're looking for tools that can kind of support us in these initiatives, it's really important to kind of understand what are all the pockets of funding that might be accessed for the things we're thinking about, and also who owns that, you know, little bag of money. Or big bag of money, as it might be, and who can we connect with? And I think that, like, we just wanted to share this out to you guys so that you have the tools you need to like have these conversations. And if the answer from, you know, the SPED director is like, sorry, our budget's spent for the year, we're maxed out. Well, what about, you know, could you connect me with so-and-so who might be over this title funds, because that might apply here, kind of thing. So does that seem like it's helpful and useful? Is that something that you guys are already familiar with, or is that some of that's new? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, good. I'm glad we could give you guys some helpful information. Yeah, and I think that the thing that's fun to think about is, like, you know, from a PD perspective too, you know, oftentimes I have had the experience as SLPs, we're shoved into these, you know, PDs that are district wide that have like very little relevance to us. But when we have had the opportunity to kind of work with some districts where we've given PD that's very SLP specific, it's really fun to get the SLP teams together for those kind of PDs, because it really doesn't happen that often. You know what I mean? Like our PD time is often dictated for us by district initiatives. So it's kind of fun to be able to have like the opportunity to get together as professionals and really collaborate on topics that are near and dear to our hearts. So yeah. Okay, I don't remember what else we had next after that, Sid, but is there any more? Oh, that. Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. So the other thing that we wanted to kind of arm you guys with as resources to kind of think about as you're talking with folks in your district about new initiatives is, what are the things that an administrator would be looking for when you're saying, I'm interested in accessing some funds for this? The first thing that's going to be really powerful, we all know, is student data. So like, one of the things that I think about is, as we're talking about, you know, over like this surge of referrals. Well, that surge of referrals might be manageable if we were actually exiting kids from special ed at a similar rate, but we all know that's not happening. So, you know, just showing that when your caseloads are so overloaded and you're trying to adhere to this kind of traditional model of pull out services for every kid, and you have this, you know, never ending influx of referrals, are the kids that are actually on your caseload making progress? And I think that, like, so many times we have some kids that make good progress, but we have a lot of kids also that kind of make incremental progress year to year, and not to the point where they can actually exit services, right? And, you know, we all would want to be in a position where we could say, this kid is making progress, you know, year over year, and he's on track to exit services by year 2 or something like that. And I think that, you know, it feels like we often aren't in that position to be able to say that. And so being able to kind of show data on, like, I would be really interested, Stacy, with your pilot classrooms that you're going into, are you seeing less referrals from those teachers because the kids are actually getting what they need before the referral point, right?
That is something that I, you know, like, I can't go back in time, but I have like taken some data on the last several years of, you know, how many referrals, you know, over the last about, 5 years have I been getting? And then, like, trying to track, if this different service delivery model is making the impact. The other thing that I've been trying to do is, and this is a hard one, it's hard to like define, is like how many kids are, we have kids who, like, due to the nature of their disability, are probably never going to, like,
Yes. Right.
to exit, be with their,
Right. Right.
but with some of the speech and some of that, what I'm really trying to have in place is when those concerns are brought up of, well, if we don't do early intervention and we don't do early intervention the way we've always done it, then we're going to all of a sudden have a bunch of 4th and 5th graders that can't talk, and it's going to be terrible,
Mhm.
So I'm trying to over time collect some data so that if that's brought up, I can say, oh, well, that just really hasn't been what we are seeing here.
Yes.
It's not just that we've turned our back on kids and now we've
Yeah.
got these classrooms full of kids with poor communication skills,
Yeah.
but that, that this service delivery model is
Yeah.
going to work. Or,
Well, and that reminds me, I know we talked about this at least once in the summer, but I think we mentioned before, like San Diego Unified has had this tiered intervention model in place for tier 2 for, for speech services, especially for a decade. And so what they have like a decade's worth of this data. And so what they have done is they publish some of it. So they, like in the ASHA journals and such. And so it's really powerful to have that kind of data, especially to show families that might be skeptical, or if you have anyone in administration or teachers who might be skeptical, it's very powerful to say, oh, look, this district did this for 5 years or 10 years, and look at what they had to show for it, which is really remarkable. Yeah.
What my experience has been thus far
Mhm.
is that teachers and families want to push back initially
Mhm.
on the direct service,
Mhm.
but with enough education, they are really, really happy with that. I am with their student, I'm tracking their student, I'm watching things, I'm taking data. I think that having those kids at least being on my radar and at least receiving services, whether it looks like conversations with teachers, whether it looks like conversations with para, whether it looks like tier 1 services or tier 2 services, my families have been okay. The
Mhm.
ones even that originally had given me some pushback have been okay with the kind of, at least if you're saying so,
Mhm.
like, at least if you're saying, that this is okay and you're tracking it and you're watching it, they've I've been able to answer their questions and they've been receptive. So
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah. And I think sometimes just giving families like that level of visibility is really helpful too. Like if they can see the numbers kind of moving along, on progress reports or whatever you're sharing home, like that can be really powerful too. It's like, oh, okay, I just, so you guys know, I think I might have mentioned in a past one, I have a son who has been in special ed his whole life. And I know that when I, have meetings with his team and they're able to say, okay, in October, he was at 40% and now he's up at 70%. I mean, obviously I'm in the field and I know what all those numbers mean, but like, it's really powerful as a parent to be like, oh my gosh, like you see the day to day and it's like, you're not sure, but like, it's really powerful to be able to kind of see that data, like in quarter intervals where it's like, oh, we really did make a lot of progress this year, So yeah, it's great. Okay. Let's see what we had next said. So we've kind of been talking about this all along, like what's working in your district. I think, Phyllis, like you guys, I know, are using a much more traditional model, obviously for your speech therapist therapy services that you talked about. Can you remind me, are you guys involved, the SLP team involved in the tiered interventions at all with supporting teachers at tier 2?
We are discussing that currently. Honestly, we had discussed about the way it was here before, but with the way things are just increasing all of a sudden, we have not had the opportunity to have, like, we used to have something called articulation lab. I don't know if you all had heard about that, but we had started that a while back, and it's been kind of put on the shelf, but we're discussing how we might address that again in the future.
Yeah. So your articulation lab was for kids not yet identified for SPED.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Similar to kind of what we were talking about that San Diego's been doing. Yeah. Okay. So, and how was the articulation lab run? Was it an SLP running it, or how did you guys run it?
I probably wasn't here at the time in other places, but it was always an SLP who would have students who they felt could benefit without being totally placed in speech therapy services.
Yeah.
That's an ideal situation. And we were discussing about how we could get permission from parents and screening and all that. And it's on the table, but right now we're trying to keep up with those referrals that we have and the students that are qualified.
Yeah.
But it's in our future planning.
Yeah. I think, Stacy, do you already have a little bit of data on like a reduction in referrals since you've initiated this?
Yeah, yes and no.
And it kind of like not formally, but
Yes. Yeah. And a lot of it we're just still like in the early stages. Like I feel like I'm still getting the referrals. I'm just handling the referrals differently. So like I feel like it's, and I still have kids on my caseload that I would have done differently.
Yeah.
And until those like it can't happen all at once. So yes and no.
Well, I think I'm really excited to see. I think we shared with you guys earlier in the summer that we have a district that we're working with in Oklahoma, and they're doing a very systematic overhaul of MTSS in their district, where their whole speech team, 45 SLPs across the district, are involved with, it's a very large district, involved with supporting the teachers at implementing some tier 2 supports in their classrooms. And I'm very interested to see if they're able to kind of stem the tide of referrals, because they went from something like 300 referrals a year to 750 in like 1 year. Like it was like that big of a jump, where it was almost double, like from 1 year to the next. And it was just impossible to to manage. And so they're implementing this tiered intervention model very specifically to see if they can kind of impact some of the over referrals and intervene early, like we all wish we could, and so we'll definitely share out the data once that starts coming in from them. Yeah, because I think that could support, Phyllis, that's the thing. It's like a catch-22, right? It's like you're drowning in these referrals and you're drowning in these exploding caseloads. So how do you carve out the time to kind of, get ahead of it? And I think it's really challenging. Sid and I were talking before you guys jumped in. We have one district we worked with last year up in New York, and they were able to fund an entire SLPA role to do tier 2 interventions in their pre-K, in their K-1 classrooms. And she's doing primarily like pre-literacy and early speech work, and that's her entire job. And I don't know exactly how they funded it. My guess is it was from one of the title funds, because that person is not even, she doesn't even touch SPED kids. She's only doing tiered interventions in general ed. Yeah.
I love that idea as far as using our SLPAs in that way. I feel like, that's just such a slippery slope. And
Yeah.
I love those
I think it's
ideas.
a perfect way to use an SLPA because they absolutely have the right skill set for that. And
Yeah.
with an SLP kind of providing some, coaching and guidance, it can be really effective. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, I think we're kind of nearing time. Did you guys have anything else that we didn't cover that you wanted to talk about?
If I can ask a quick question. So,
Sure.
first of all, I don't know. I don't even know if I should be. I'm not an SLP leader. I'm a mere SLP in my district. I'm
Okay,
in
good.
Massachusetts.
Great.
And I'm also very into literacy. That's my thing. And I'm at the middle school. And good luck. So I'm wondering if you've talked at all about MTSS in the middle schools, because I mean, I have students that I see once a week. They are so checked out. They are like the 7th and 8th graders. They want nothing to do with me. They don't care. They all have, they all have comprehension issues. They all have vocab issues. Most of them have literacy issues. And I feel like there's very little, and I don't even know necessarily what kind of strategies to suggest to the classroom teacher. So it wouldn't be,
Yeah.
as far as district-wide, I'm not sure, but I'm in a school where they would probably be receptive. It's a pretty small school. They wouldn't say no to me coming in, but I'm struggling with what I really could do to be supportive, or let alone how I could, convince the rest of my department. But I'd be really curious to hear, any suggestions or thoughts about what we as SLPs can do as far as MTSS at the, maybe
At the middle school level. I think it's a I think it's a great question. I have a middle schooler myself, so I know, as a parent, I can tell you the number one thing they want is to be exactly like their peers, right? So they want to be doing what their peers are doing. And so I think, one of the things that I have seen be pretty effective in that age group is like, if they're working on something that's different than their peers because they have a specific need, if it can look similar to what their peers are doing, like for example, if they're using independent work time in the classroom to go on to like for example, the kids are using independent work time to go on and do some exercises on IXL, for example, or iReady or something like that. If
we've already in my district.
If they can have some exercises that are specific to their intervention needs that are like also on the computer and doing kind of what their peers are doing, but just in a different program. Like, I think that's honestly one of the most effective things for that age group, because they don't want to be working with an adult in front of their peers. Like if their peers aren't working with an adult, right? Like they, having them kind of come in, having you come in alongside their peers is probably worse than having you pull them out. You know what I mean? And so I think if there's a way you can kind of set up activities for them that they can do somewhat independently that are at their level, that are either, selected from the tools that your district is already using, or we can even kind of share some of our tools as well that we have that target those kind of skills. I think it could be effective. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think that I appreciate the suggestion. I'd love to see what your tools are.
Okay. Yeah.
And I mean, currently I have them all in pullout, but they wouldn't mind necessarily. And I've even tried, I've tried talking to their classroom teachers and kind of like doing their classwork with them, but they were super unengaged. Like, I just felt like I was giving them the answers, like
does your district have dedicated tiered intervention?
They do.
They do. Okay, good.
They do, and that's a lot of the time. That's when I pull them anyway. But they have that every day, and a lot of my students do go for reading intervention during that time.
Yes.
But there's also no reason that I can't partner with the literacy interventionist.
Right. Well, that's the other thing I was going to say is that, like, I know that that's one of the most. I think being able to connect with the reading intervention folks in your district and in your building can be incredibly powerful. I don't know if you've done this, Stacy, at all in yours, but we're very lucky here at Amplio because we have a really strong reading intervention team that manages we have a dyslexia product that is separate from our speech and language product. But so we get to collaborate with the folks that are like dyslexia specialists and reading intervention specialists in our team all the time. And it is so fun to realize how much deep overlap there is between the things that we're all working on. It's really not that separate, right? From not just the like early literacy, pre-literacy stuff and speech and phonics, that's obviously overlapping, but also at a higher language level of like vocabulary and syntax and story structure and story grammar, like we're both working on all those things. So let's just work on them together, right? Because it can be so much more effective when we're collaborating that way. But I agree with you, Irina, like doing that kind of collaboration with those reading intervention teachers, you guys might be able to like double your power that way, right? If you're,
Well, I'm actually in school to be a literacy interventionist. I'm actually in school to be a literacy interventionist. I just did Orton Gillingham training, so I'm heading that way too. So I'm like, racking my brain, like what can I do? But again, I only see them for 30 minutes a week, so
I know
it's just really hard. Tough to kind of select. And if they, I've been trying to do morphology with them and stuff, and it's just hard to get them engaged. I guess the age group is really tough. Yeah,
I get it. I believe it. Yeah. Well, Irina, how about I reach out to you afterwards and we can set up a meeting and I can show you kind of the tools we have and you can see if it might meet some of your needs. Yeah.
That'd be great. I appreciate this discussion. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, Phyllis and Stacy and Irina, it was wonderful to connect with all of you guys. And thank you again for all your contributions. Really appreciate it.